Here it is step by step. You'll notice that once the ball is past Curry's set point and is on the way to being launched into the air, his left hand loses contact with the ball first. As I've talked about many times in other videos on this channel, Curry has an offhand thumb flick, which is clearly visible here. As you can see, his left hand thumb moved from a downward pointing position to a forward pointing position while in contact with the ball, before eventually losing contact with the ball as his left hand rotates outward. Shortly after this, the ball loses contact with Curry's right hand, and it goes off for yet another splash. What happens with Curry's offhand after the release is what I believe is worth noting, and no one else has explained up until now. As soon as the ball is gone and Curry's right hand has completed its forward flick, his offhand moves pretty decisively in towards his extended right arm. Here it is a few times in full, so you can see how obvious this motion really is. Not only does Curry's left hand move in towards his right arm, but his right arm and hand also appear to move slightly to the left, countering the movement from his left hand. The end result is that Curry's left hand crosses right above his right forearm area, and he briefly holds this position before falling back to the ground and eventually letting his arms fall to his sides. As we can see from another angle, Curry's left hand does not only move to the right, but it also moves a little down and back towards Curry's face, caused by added flexion in his left elbow. So, to summarize, his left hand moves both to the right and downwards after the release of the ball, accompanied by a simultaneous inward movement of the right arm. In the rest of this video, I'm going to try to explain what is going on with this unique series of post-release motions. Some people might suggest that this left hand drift is insignificant as it happens after the ball is released, but I think it reveals some possibly vital factors in Curry's historically excellent shooting. The first thing to note is that once Curry's offhand reaches this strange position above his right forearm, he holds the position for a significant amount of time, keeping his left shoulder, elbow, and wrist at the same angles until he gets back to the ground. This suggests to me that this motion and end positioning is intentional and not just a random position that he passes through as he finishes his shot. The same can be said for his shooting arm, which holds its finished position with its leftward drift for as long as the left arm does. The reason for this inward movement of both limbs is, I believe, to aid directional consistency. We can see that his left-hand thumb adds forward force to the ball by flicking forward, which partially explains Curry's unbelievable shooting range. And the way his left hand moves after the ball is out the way suggests that there is a little pressure being applied from his left hand towards the right. This makes sense because in order for his thumb flick to impart force on the ball the way it does, it must have some friction on the ball, which is generated by pressure between the two surfaces. This means that there is an unbalanced force in the ball going from the left to the right. This is where it seems likely that Curry's right arm creates force in the ball that is mostly straight but is ever so slightly off-center to the left of the basket. The evidence for this is in the way his right arm moves towards the left, across his body. This right to left movement is to maintain the directional consistency that Curry has in his shot, as he must counteract the slight leftward force from his left hand with an opposing force. The sum of all these forces is pretty clear. There is no force on the ball that does not point forward or up, as Curry's shot is as straight as it gets. I think that Curry is really exaggerating these movements here in this practice as he gets loose, because he wants to emphasize these counterbalancing forces to really zone in on them. You might be wondering why Curry does this at all, whether he does so consciously or not. Surely it's just more simple for his right arm to produce a force directly towards the basket, and for his left hand and arm to play no role in the force production portion of the shot. This is the mold of a traditional shooter, such as Klay Thompson, whose offhand releases from the ball without a thumb flick and without any force generation, meaning that his right hand does all the work in moving the ball towards the basket. This is also what most shooting coaches would tell you to do now, as the offhand is commonly referred to as the guide hand, and players are always taught to remove this hand from interfering with the release. But for Curry, we have to take into account the fact that he has an offhand thumb flick, one that I believe helps him generate some force behind his shot. It flicks so close to the moment of release, 2 frames in this video to be exact, that its motion does add to the momentum of the ball,